Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the inaugural episode of... What are we going to call this? Cold Potato, that was it.
Cold Potato.
I will get that at some point. As always, I am your host, Campion, and joined to me today is, of course, my ever-loyal co-host, the self-proclaimed voice of a generation, Mr. Grady. How's it going?
Hi, I don't think I gave myself that title. I don't remember giving myself that title.
Oh, I distinctly remember you saying that. I'm pretty sure on like an hourly basis you just message me referring to yourself in the third person as that. So.
We're also on the same generation. We're pretty much the same age.
In fact, I think there's only like a couple months difference between the two of us.
Yeah. What are we doing today, Campion?
So today, this is just a new piece of content that I just wanted to, give a bit of a test run, because it takes a while to edit the Spider-Man videos, and just so that there isn't like a drought of content, like where I only upload like once a month, I figured that weekly would just do like a kind of a podcast kind of thing like this. What we're going to be doing is talking about like cult movies, like films that have come out. They maybe weren't all that well received when they first came out. Maybe they weren't super duper popular or doing super duper well, but then as the years have gone on, they've gained like a bit of a following. What film have we chosen today, Grady?
I don't like these segues. You
threw it to me. I'm going to throw it to you.
You made me watch the movie Tremors, starring Kevin Bacon.
And Fred Ward.
I'm gonna have to pretend I know who a lot of people are.
Okay, you say I forced you to watch this. I would like to point out, I really like this movie. I thought, hey, for the first episode, I'll throw Grady a really fun movie. I didn't realize it was that much of a chore for you, mate.
You stole my F-bomb. You told me I only get one and then you use it.
No, we only get one.
You used it in the first minute.
Hey, get it out of the way nice and early. I'll tell you what, I'll censor out that one and then we'll have and then you can have the only uncensored one. How's about that?
That sounds good.
I mean, that's more work for me in editing, but that's future Campion's problem.
Everything's future Campion's problem, except for this podcast that we're recording right now.
True. So anyway, this was released in 1990 by Universal Pictures. Apparently the idea came to the film's writers when they were doing like a film shoot for the US Navy. Out in the middle of the desert for whatever, I don't quite know why the Navy had to shoot out in the desert, but whatever. They were like sitting on a rock and they were just kind of, shooting ideas back and forth, and they were wondering, what would happen if there was something underground that would prevent us from getting off of this rock. It's directed by Ron Underwood. This is like his first theatrical feature-length film. After this, he'd go on to direct stuff like City Slickers, which is a very well-received movie that did very well. He did a movie called Speechless, which bombed. Mighty Joe Young, which also bombed, and then The Adventures of Pluto Nash, which is one of... Are you familiar with that film, Grady?
I have not heard of a single film you just mentioned.
Okay, The Adventures of Pluto Nash is one of the most infamous box office disasters in film history. So, he didn't do super well after this film. Pluto Nash earned like 7.1 mil against a budget of 100 million, so it didn't...
Oh, that's not good.
No. But then afterwards he went on to directing stuff for television, and his career's picked up quite a bit since then. So, at least he managed to recover. So, we were just, having a bit of a chat before the podcast started, and I get the feeling that your initial impressions of this movie was a bit different to mine.
I thought you were getting me to watch Brokeback Mountain.
Yeah, you explicitly mentioned about how you were distracted as the film's like opening credits were rolling up, and then suddenly you were watching two cowboys getting dressed on the back of a truck.
Look, I didn't know what you'd given me to watch. I I like to, when we're doing these sort of shows, go in with an open mind.
Yeah.
Obviously, I knew a little bit about the film. I knew there was like a sand monster, but that's pretty much all I knew going into this. So yeah, when I turned to sit down on the couch and watch the TV, and there's two cowboys getting dressed, you know, you do you. Didn't think that was the film I'd signed up for, but hey.
No, you're right. How dare I make you watch the Oscar award winning film Brokeback Mountain? How dare I?
Look, that'll be a future episode. I might need a few more F-bombs though.
It's cult classic though. I don't think a film that was nominated for Best Picture can quite qualify as a cult classic.
Yeah, who defines that term? Is there like a cult classic committee that they're like, okay, this film's allowed to be a cult classic. We give it our tick. We give it our little certification.
No, there isn't. Like, it's a pretty subjective term, to be completely honest. I did see that there are people who have tried to make like definitive, lists of cult classics over the years, but I think there was one done back in like 2006 or something. But then, as the decades roll on, more films are going to be cult classics and stuff. But anyway, back to the film. Aside from your initial impression, like, what did you just give me your overall basic impression of of what you thought of the movie once you had actually like watched the whole thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for the listeners, I finished watching this maybe an hour ago, so it's pretty fresh in my mind.
Yeah.
My impressions was, yes, this was made in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, pretty much like I'd kind of expect from a horror film. Nothing
quote
was
unquote horror. Big.
90s horror. Nothing was like overly crazy. I'm pretty sure I sent you 2 messages while it was playing, which was, oh god, this is old, and oh god, this is campy. So those 2 might sum up my opinion on the movie, to be fair.
Although I'm a little worried if that's what you consider really old and really campy, then I fear for you in the upcoming episodes.
Look, I'll watch what you throw at me.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad. I didn't come out of that going like, oh man, I want my hour and a half back.
Yeah.
Would I watch it again? Maybe. Probably not, but maybe.
Yeah. Like, to be honest, I see where you're coming from. It's a very... I don't want to say by the number, it doesn't pull out like any big surprises in it. Like, there's no massive twists or anything that you wouldn't expect. Like, it's a movie about a killer sandworm. It's very much, what you see is what you get kind of thing. But the reason why I like this movie and why I actually wanted it to be our first episode is because I think that even though it's a very basic premise, it's done very, very well. Like, it is a very solid cast. The writing is surprisingly clever, especially for a movie like this. Like, a lot of the things that end up happening in the film are foreshadowed quite overtly in the early parts of the film. Stuff like I think it was like a fridge or an ice machine in the general store, which starts acting up really early on, but then it ends up being like a huge part of like a character's death later on in the film. Even like little things where a guy says, oh man, if that monster comes at me, I'll just swing at it, with a pickaxe, and then of course they end up using a pickaxe to swing at him later on in the movie. The constant thing of how it's just like, oh man, how Fred Ward's character says to Kevin Bacon's character, oh man, you've always got to have a plan, you never think that far ahead. And then of course the climax of the film, Kevin Bacon's character is just like, you know what, I've got a plan, and then he uses that to suss things out.
I don't know if that counts as a plan necessarily.
Hey, it had steps and that was towards the resolution of defeating the monster. I think that counts, even if he did come up with it like on the fly.
We're not going to stick to it. I just want to mention, like, massive history back. I'm pretty sure we've had an argument over the definition of a plan on a really old episode of the radio show we used to do. Because what you just said there is exactly what I remember you saying. But yeah,
I would not be surprised.
I liked the pretty much the climax. As you say, it's a little paint by numbers, I guess, in terms of its plot devices, but it is just a case of, as you say, doing it really well, right? Like there's a paint by numbers that a 2-year-old colored in with their coloring sticks, and it doesn't look right at all. And then there's a paint by numbers that Bob Ross paints in, and it looks absolutely amazing, and you'd never know it was a paint by numbers.
Yeah, like I think something that I've heard used to describe this film is that it's a familiar homemade meal, just made really well. Like it doesn't throw any curveballs. It isn't like a revolutionary piece of cinema, but it's still just like a very fun monster movie.
It's definitely that. It is monster movie to the T, of a monster movie. I took notes. I was like, hey, I'm gonna be a good co-host. I'm gonna take notes. Yeah. And just if we're starting at like the start of the movie, my third note of 3 is, man, these guys are unlucky. They somehow run into every single body that this worm caused.
Yeah. And I got something I really appreciate, especially about these pre-Jurassic Park monster movies, is how a lot of the special effects are practical.
Welcome to my second note.
I love how like a lot of the special effects, like the monsters and stuff, about it's all like physical props, or they use like actual in-camera special effects to kind of, you know, create the illusion that the sand monster exists. It's something that's why I like a lot of these old like monster movies and stuff. I like being able to see an actual physical like puppet or animatronic there, which to be fair Jurassic Park did a lot of, but then did a lot of CG stuff, and then everything else down the line was just like, oh, let's just do CG.
There's good and bad things too.
Yeah. Because like I'm very nostalgic for physical puppets and props, so I do have a tendency. Like, what did you think of it? Because I don't think you have the same rose-tinted glasses when it comes to this kind of stuff that I do.
Yeah, it's got positives and negatives, right? Like the first thing, obviously I took a note of it, is like, yeah, it is full of practical effects. And sometimes it's really cool to see, as you say, like something visceral in front of you. Like if it was 90s CGI, I'd probably tell you it didn't age very well and looked horrible.
Yeah.
I kind of say that about the practical stuff as well. But it's just like, you know, the sandworm explodes and then you just see like what looks like pumpkin pie flying through the sky and landing next to the characters and everything, and you're like, okay. And there's just a few effects that I wouldn't say pull you out of it, but definitely make you just go, okay.
Yeah, something that makes you go, that's an effect. Not, oh, that's a monster, but that's a special effect. Like, as much as I do love the prop for the sandworms themselves, which are called graboids, by the way, is I really love like the little snake tentacles that come out of its mouth. But I do notice, especially on rewatches, that they are like they're a bit rigid for things that should be like kind of very fluid, and they should move around a lot more freely. But it does honestly look like they've just stuck this puppet on the end of like a wire, and they just kind of, there's a guy at the other end just kind of pushing it along.
Yeah, if I was going to pick like my favorite effect, and I think it's something that looked really well practical, there was only one point where I went like, ooh, with it, and it's the worm moving under the ground. And just the way that the ground moves, and like it's not a crazy effect to be able to pull off. It just looked cool. And then there was one point where like a character stood where it was gonna go, and it sunk in a little bit, and I was like, oh, okay, edit that out, but okay.
Yeah, because I think the way they would have done like the image of like the dirt or the sand kind of rippling would be, it'd probably be something simple, like they just have like they dig a trench or a tarp, put a guy underneath it, or even just like something on like a dolly, so they can push against the surface, and then they just put a tarp over it, then they just cover it with sand and dirt, and then they just push it along. It's really simple, but it looks really cool, especially when as it's moving, you see other things being pulled in. Like, I always love that scene where it's like moving along the fence, and you see the fence post being knocked over as it's like chasing the characters.
If I'm picking, like, if that was my favorite effect, my worst effect, is when the old man farmer dies, second person to die, and they like lift the hat off, and his face is there or his head is there.
Yeah.
And it just looks like it was a prosthetic you were meant to apply to a human that they just sort of put on the floor.
Yeah.
That one's my least favorite effect of the film.
I'm actually with you on that one, because it's not just the way it looks, but also if you think about it in terms of how the movie works, you'd think that if it was like, if he was being grabbed by the creature, like everyone else, he would just be pulled underground and eaten whole. Like, there's no real reason why he would just kind of leave the head sticking out of the ground.
Because it's funny to look at.
True.
Someone had a cool idea of, like, what if they lifted up this hat and there was just a decapitated head?
True.
You know that's how it happened in the writing room, and they were like, that's a good idea, let's do that.
But I think my favourite effect in the movie, and which is by far my favourite scene, is the scene in the basement. Like, the survival preppers gun nut basement, where the graboid just comes smashing through the wall, and there's like this huge big worm just kind of like screaming at them. Its tentacles are going everywhere. I love that bit.
Yeah, that piece was well done. Down to even like the gunplay and stuff like that from the actors. It's a pretty fun scene to watch in isolation.
Yeah, I especially love it when like, because they're on the phone, they're talking to them, and you see them in their basement. The worm smashes through one wall, and then it just pans to the other wall, and it's just covered in just all these different guns and firearms and all of this ammunition and stuff. I love that bit.
It's kind of like what you'd expect, I guess. Like, that's well set dressed for the doomsday preppers of the 90s, right?
Yeah.
We don't need, years' supply of food. We just need our guns. If I'm looking at my notes, because I want to be able to throw my notebook over my shoulder.
Yeah.
As I said, I had 3 notes, right? I was like, these guys are unlucky, practical effects. And my top note, the first thing I noted, and my girlfriend wouldn't stop laughing at me because immediately as I saw it, I yelled it out. I was like, that's the old man from Three Ninjas. Walter in the store, I recognize the actor. That's my third note. That's all. I'm out of notes.
Really?
Now.
Because, hang on, I gotta quickly Google this, because I looked up stuff on all the other actors, what they've done. He was like the only one I didn't pull anything up on.
I'm pretty sure, unless I got it wrong, that's Grandpa Joe from the Three Ninja series. I'm pretty certain. I didn't look it up. I didn't fact check myself.
You mean the guy who ran the store, right?
Yeah, Walter. I took a note of his name. Look, I took 3 notes. I'm really hoping this one's not wrong. I'm really hoping. Look, if it's wrong, can you just lie to me? Can you just say I was right? You can edit it in later.
I'll tell you what, I'll edit it out, alright?
Okay. No, yeah, I guess.
Grandpa Mori from the Three Ninjas, yep, you're right! Woo!
So I recognized him, and it was like an immediate moment. I love the Three Ninjas films, like, for all the stupid they are. But I was like, hey, actor I know. I don't care about Kevin Bacon. We got Grandpa.
You don't care about Kevin Bacon, literally the most famous actor in this movie.
Grandpa.
Grandpa
Ninja's cool, man.
Yeah. Actually, while we're on the topic of the film's cast, it has a fairly surprising cast. Not so much in people you immediately recognize, with the exception of Kevin Bacon, obviously. But it's just, I looked at all these other people, and like, I feel like I've seen these people somewhere. They seem kind of familiar. I looked into a bunch of them. Of course, as we've mentioned before, Kevin Bacon, who's been in literally everything, I think, at this point. Fred Ward, who plays the lead opposite Kevin. He's been in a few stuff. I don't think things either of us would recognize. Most of his like big films were long before either of us were born. Stuff like Escape from Alcatraz and The Right Stuff.
Was he in Three Ninjas?
No, he was not in Three Ninjas.
Okay, then I don't know
him. Heather Gummer, the Doomsday Prepper woman, like the wife. She's played by Reba McEntire. Do you know who
I
that is?
I know Reba, yeah.
The country music singer. This is actually her very first film role.
Okay.
Yeah. Apparently, the filmmakers weren't super keen on having like a country singer in their movie, but the studio really pushed it, and they're like, "Oh, fine, we'll at least give her an audition." And they're like, "Oh wait, she's actually pretty good, huh? Let's actually put her in the movie. She's perfect for this."
Yeah, I know her. She's from Little Rascals. I love how we're discussing like a old movie, and somehow I just have knowledge of actors and actresses from other horrible old movies.
You just have it's always fascinating just seeing just like the crossover between our completely different film knowledge and film tastes.
To put it into perspective for people who definitely don't know me, nobody knows me. I probably couldn't tell you another film Kevin Bacon was in.
Even though I'm dead certain you've seen quite a few.
I've probably seen them. I couldn't tell you them, but I know Little Rascals and Three Ninjas. That's all. That's all you need to know.
Because when I hear Reba McEntire, my first thought is, oh, country singer. Oh, she also had her own sitcom a few years back. You're like, Little Rascals.
It was a good movie.
The little girl in the film, Ariana Richards, she hasn't done that much recently. I think now she's more of like a successful artist. That's what she does. However, her most famous role would be a couple of years later when she would play Lex in the first Jurassic Park movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, so so she goes from... So just multiple, like, big, like, really good monster movies there. And, of course, we have the guy, Michael Gross, who plays Burt Gummer, the husband Doomsday Prepper guy. He was... I don't know if you're familiar with this, because do you know the sitcom?
Is it Three Ninjas?
No, it's Family Ties.
I am aware of it. I'm not 100% about it.
Yeah, he finished filming on Family Ties like the day before shooting this movie, so it goes from like a pretty liberal, like soft-spoken dad kind of character to like this incredibly right-wing, like gun nut prepper.
Pew pew. Yeah, it's an interesting cast, like, all round. Like, I feel like I didn't look at any role and say, you're wrong for that. Or, like, you don't fit that role.
Yeah.
And that's what you kind of want. You don't necessarily need, the 20... You could have the 20 best actors and actresses in a room and try to make a film, and it's not going to work. You just need the best actor or actress for a role. And everybody played their role in this movie.
Yeah, and I feel like they all did pretty well. I think, and it's filled with like a lot of genuinely likable characters because a big problem I have with a lot of monster movies is that they always have like a bunch of really annoying characters. People, they're just there to die. Like it's just like, oh, they're there to raise the body count. I think that slasher movies in particular are really infamous for this.
Yes.
Because you want to enjoy them being murdered. You don't want to see characters you like get killed, so they put a bunch of unlikable people in there. There's only like one character in this movie that I really don't like, but he doesn't die, and that's... yeah, that's always kind of irritated me. I assume you know which one I'm talking about.
Do I? I don't know your tastes of characters you hate.
Okay, but I feel like there's only... If I was to say the unlikable character, I feel like there's only one person in this movie that really fits that role.
Look, I was enamored with Grandpa Joe. But yes, yeah, that was his role, right? And he still fit it.
Yeah. I'm talking about the teenage boy, for the record. Like, he was very irritating.
Aren't all teenage boys?
True. I mean, we were teenage boys at one point in time. So.
Incorrect. I immediately aged from 11 to 21. I just skipped 10 years of my life.
From what I recall, you immediately aged from like 10 to like 37, and then you've just been aging backwards slowly.
Look, we agreed that you wouldn't take jabs at my hairline and my baldness, so please refrain.
Well, that's not what I was referring to, and last time I checked, we're both going bald, so...
That's true. That means we can both make hairline jokes. Yeah. To get back to Tremors, nobody wants to hear our life story. I feel like it would be something that I would struggle to find the correct group of people to, like, show it to or to suggest it to, because I feel like the people who would enjoy this film are the people who go out and they watch the cult classics. They go watch the 90s movies, and they're probably the people like yourself that are suggesting it to others. I don't know if there's a massive audience out there who would really enjoy a movie like Tremors who hasn't already seen it, because they're those people, right? And they run in the same circles.
Yeah, exactly. Like, everyone who I've recommended this to, who I think would like it, they've already seen it. Like, they saw it long before I did.
I don't feel like I can just sit down like a group of friends and be like, hey guys, let's go watch Tremors. I feel like that would be pretty miss instead of, a head out of the park.
Yeah. Like, I feel like I could show this film to, like, a lot of people, and they would enjoy it. It wouldn't be their favourite movie ever, but they'd be like, oh yeah, this is a pretty solid film, but it's not the kind of stuff that they'd go for. I'd have to, kind of cajole them into watching. I mean, I had to start a podcast to get you to watch the...
It's correct. This isn't The Avengers. This isn't Squid Game. It's not, like, super crazy mainstream. Yeah. But yeah, I guess if you like 90s movies and you like the sort of monster movies and somehow you haven't seen Tremors, then go watch it. I've heard there's like 57 of them for you to watch.
There are... You're somewhat close. There isn't 57, there are 7.
That's too many.
Films. And as someone who has seen all of them, just quickly run down them. Tremors 2, by far and away the best of the sequels. It is nowhere near as good as this movie, but it's at least fun and watchable.
So what you're saying is they go off a cliff.
Tremors 3 is passable, I guess. Tremors 4, some people consider better than 3. I can't stand it. 5 is okay. That's where they introduce... That's where they go to fight graboids in South Africa. It's okay. 6 is when they're still fighting graboids in South Africa, but they just pretend that it's the Arctic Circle because they couldn't go to the Arctic Circle, so they went back to South Africa instead, and they just color everything blue.
Please tell me 7 is by fighting graboids in space.
No, graboids is when they just go, when they're just like, Jurassic World was popular, let's just do that. So they set it on an island fighting genetically engineered graboids.
Okay. I feel like space would have been cooler.
Hey, apparently they're planning an 8th film, so they could still do graboids in space. Although, with how the budgets for every subsequent film is just continuously shrinking, I don't quite know how they're going to do it.
Campion, here's the solution. We film it in South Africa, and we just make everything grey.
Real talk, though, because the sixth film, right? It was just like, oh, this is going to be fighting Arctic graboids. It's like, oh, okay. Well, that'll be interesting. First scene, opening scene, is very obviously a sand dune with a blue filter on top of it. Sand looks very different to snow, and it is abundantly clear that they're nowhere near anywhere cold. You can see these poor actors. I imagine they went at a colder time of year, but you can still tell that they are not freezing. It is very warm for them, and they're wearing Arctic gear, and it is hilarious.
Yep, I've just loaded up some of the stills from this. Yeah, this is, Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's not talk about that one.
If you want to watch a Tremors sequel, just stick with 2, and then just don't bother with any of the other ones.
Look, here's my suggestion. Watch number 1, assume it's a standalone and there's no further sequels, and you're done.
Because Kevin Bacon doesn't return for any of the subsequent films.
I wonder why.
Fred Ward comes back for the second one. That's the only one he comes back for. Michael Gross, who plays Burt Gummer, he returns for all of them, every sequel. This is his franchise as far as people are concerned.
Look, somebody's got to carry this movie.
And to be fair, out of all the characters to build sequels out of, he probably is the best bet because he's definitely like the most fun and probably the most charismatic out of all of them. Because he's like a crazy, well, not crazy, but he's like this badass gun nut who's like really into guns, and so having him fight graboids is just, if you're making sequels, that probably is the best option.
It's definitely better than Annoying Teenager the sequel. Probably.
Although speaking of that, the two kid characters in the film do return for the third one.
Oh, they just disappear for the second?
Yep, well, in the second one they go to Mexico, so it's like nowhere near Nevada.
Okay.
And the third one they come back to Perfection, which is where this film is set.
So Nevada, Mexico, yeah. Nevada. What was 4?
4 is still in Nevada, but it's during the early colonial days of the United States, so it's back in time.
What? How does the character reprise?
It's his ancestor.
Oh my god.
Hiram Gummer, I think is his name. 5 is where they go to South Africa. 6 is when they're still in South Africa, but they pretend that it's the Arctic. And 7 is like some tropical island that I don't quite remember where it is. 7 also has the guy who played Napoleon Dynamite. He plays opposite Bert in that movie for some reason. So
you've lost me. I'm gonna be honest. I've backed away from the microphone. I'm having to speak up so my microphone picks it. You lost me with the whole colonial thing. I feel like you skipped over that when you were talking about the sequels.
Okay, I probably should have mentioned that one, yes. Each film, with the exception of, I think, 4, has, like, new types and variants of graboids. You've got the classic, sandworms in the first movie. The second movie has these things called shriekers, which are bipedal, and they see things through heat and stuff. The third one has the infamous and divisive edition of the Ass Blasters. 4 doesn't have anything. 5 is where they introduce like the African variants of these things, so they're like a lot bigger and a lot nastier. 6 has the Arctic variants, which are bigger and nastier, I guess.
They're blue.
They're blue. And 7 has the genetically engineered ones.
And then 8 has the space ones.
And then 8 has, I guess 8 would have the revelation that they're aliens.
They're bigger. They're nastier, but they're grey.
Yes.
I think that's probably one, and maybe I missed, like, a massive plot point, but I feel like the film just sort of ended at the end. They were like, we killed the 3 that we said were here. We're done. Goodbye. I don't know. It just felt like it just ended on me.
Well, yeah, I mean, they don't really have a lot. Once they'd killed all 4 of them, they didn't really have a lot to... It's all... Oh, you missed one giant worm. Oh, you weren't paying attention at all. But
look,
no,
one of them was already dead when they said 3.
No, they killed all 4 on screen.
I'm gonna be quiet now.
Remember the one they slammed into the concrete wall?
Yep. I remember the last one going off a cliff.
Yes.
Which, for the record, started an existential crisis and conversation between me and my girlfriend of, if you were living as a worm, would you be in perennial dread that when you move forward, you're going to go off a cliff? Because you can't see anything underground.
True. Although, if they can feel vibrations and if they see things through, like, vibrations of the ground, you'd think they'd be able to tell that the ground was ending.
Look, that guy clearly couldn't.
You'd also think they'd be able to tell if a concrete barrier was coming up and they could just change course or stop.
We didn't say these worms had big brains.
No, they explicitly state that they do. Remember, because they keep learning and adapting as the film goes on to the tactics that the humans are using.
Well, they still fly off cliffs, so I have yet to see practical evidence of them having a big enough brain to not know to go off the edge of a cliff.
Yeah. Oh wait, no, I can't believe I forgot this. No, they force it off the cliff by throwing the explosive behind it. So the shockwave scares it, it panics and stampedes off the cliff. Okay.
Oh, is that how it's explained?
That's okay, yeah, I can't believe I forgot that. But no, that's explicitly why they throw the explosive behind it. Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll let it go. I didn't necessarily I thought it was because he jumped out of the way, I guess.
No, it was the explosive. Okay, that makes sense to me. Okay.
I'll let them have that then.
Well, with that resolved, this is the perfect movie. I love this movie, and I can't believe that you hate it. I will never.
2 out of 10. No, it's a fine movie. As I said, I don't think I'll be sitting down to surely not on my own. I won't be sitting down to rewatch Tremors. It's not going in my upper echelon of movies that I've ever seen before.
Yeah. Well, again, that's probably why it's a cult classic. Like, it's a very specific group of people who think that, you know, this is amazing. Like, don't get me wrong, I'll still cross my fingers and hope that someday we'll get, like, a big Hollywood remake of it, and they'll bring Kevin Bacon back and all that. I'm hoping for that. We are never going to get that. Because Kevin Bacon has stated that he's more than happy to come back for a new Tremors movie if they want to make it. Like, they even, like a while ago, they shot like a Tremors TV show. There actually is like a full season of it out there, but it got cancelled after the first one. And in 2017, I believe, Kevin Bacon came back to shoot like a pilot for a new Tremors show. But unfortunately, like no one, not even like the Sci-Fi Channel, picked it up, which is sad because I was really hoping they would make one.
Yeah, the Sci-Fi Channel picks up everything.
yeah, it's sad. But anyway, when this film was released, you're probably not going to be too surprised, but commercially, it didn't do very well. It only got like
what?
Yeah, unfortunately, in the year 1990, this didn't have, you know, that mass market appeal. It did.
I'm shocked. I'm baffled. I don't believe a word you're saying.
But, you know, it wasn't a massive bomb. It grossed $16 million on a $10 million budget. So,
That's
at the
positive.
so at the very least, it may, because it's hard to tell with like marketing budgets and stuff, because that usually isn't factored into the film's budget. So I think at the very least it probably made its money back, so they at least broke even on it. But, you know, breaking even doesn't exactly equate to a success when it comes to movies. But critically, it did very well. Like, a lot of the film critics who saw it genuinely liked the film. To this day, it holds an 86% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay.
So
I don't necessarily agree with that percentage, but yeah, okay.
I'd say it's probably it should be a bit higher, but, you know, we can...
Oh, yeah, 100%.
To disagree. At the time, Kevin Bacon thought that this would actually doom his movie career. He would rant to his wife about how he'd screwed his career shooting a movie about underground killer worms.
I'm with you, Kevin. I'm with you.
But in the later years, you know, once things, you know, once it had developed like a cult following and he'd rewatched it a couple times, his opinion on it has changed a lot, and that he actually, apparently at the time, he genuinely enjoyed filming it, and that he really enjoyed working on it. He just thought it was just going to doom his career.
So what you're saying is once it became loved and people enjoyed it, all of a sudden he enjoyed it.
Well, I think that, and it didn't tank, because he said this a long time, like, I think it was like 20 years or so afterwards, and by that point, you know, he'd had like a very successful film career regardless.
I don't know, I still can't tell you a single film he's been in.
Well, that's just, he was in X-Men First Class, Grady.
I don't think I watched that one.
Well, that's on you. It's an X-Men movie. They're very big and popular. Grady.
Is that a cult classic?
No, a big budget, commercially successful superhero film is not a cult classic, Grady.
Is Iron Man a cult classic?
Nothing in the MCU is a cult classic, Grady. Although, speaking of the MCU, Elizabeth Olsen, who plays the Scarlet Witch, apparently this was her favorite childhood movie that she grew up watching.
Oh, you can tell in all of her performances. She just... absolutely mirrors Kevin Bacon in this film. She's just embracing that energy that he brought to this film. I can't get through it.
Hey, he did a good job, alright? Kevin Bacon is a damn fine actor.
I can't fault Kevin, okay? Kevin's one of the only things with this film I can't fault. If Elizabeth Olsen wants to have this as her favorite childhood movie, go nuts. It's no Three Ninjas, but go nuts.
Yeah, point out that, one of your classics, Three Ninjas.
Is that one a bleeped one, or do you steal my uncensored swear?
I mean, you're not dropping any, so I think I might just have to steal that as your uncensored swear.
I'm holding it.
Yeah.
I don't know what more I can add too much more about Tremors. It's an hour and a half movie. If you want to sit down and just turn your brain off, is probably the best way I'd say to watch it. Probably not while you're doing something else.
Yeah.
Sit down, turn your brain off, just watch it. Like it's a stupid action movie, basically. Treat it like that.
It's a good popcorn movie. Like, good sit down, watch a monster kill a bunch of people, wreck a town. Good fun. If you've just seen Dune and you need another movie with sandworms, here you go.
I've had enough of sandworms. Okay, is Dune a cult classic?
I'd say the real talk for my list of movies that I want to do for the podcast, the original 1980s Dune movie is on there.
Is Mayonnaise a cult classic?
Oh, God damn it, Grady.
I was setting that up the whole time and you cut it off last time and I was like, okay, I gotta go back to this. I gotta finish my punchline.
Wow, Grady with the SpongeBob references. Wow, you're really keeping us, on the cutting edge of
Champion,
humor.
would you say with this podcast I soiled it? Oh, God.
Grady referencing the cult classic SpongeBob SquarePants there.
I've tickled my own fancy here. You might have to take it for a second.
Anyway, I think that's going to do it for us here today. As always, thank you, Grady, for joining me on the inaugural episode of Cult Potato.
Don't worry, bring me along whenever you want those SpongeBob references.
That's the only reason I've kept you around for the past decade.
Every time you call me up and you're like, Grady, you want to record a show? And I'm just sitting there going, I'm ready.
Hey, when I need outdated 90s references to things like SpongeBob SquarePants and the Three Ninjas, there's one man who I can always call.
Thank you.
So anyway, that's going to do it from us. I was about to call us the Idiots Land in here.
You can call us whatever we want, but I'm pretty sure we chose Cult Potato so we can use this footage we shot of potatoes 3 years ago, finally in a production.
Real talk, I didn't actually come up with a sign-off. I'm going to edit this part out, but I didn't actually come up with a sign-off.
No, you keep this in, Campion. You keep this in and you make up a sign-off on the fly. You got this. Don't make me do the sign-off. You've got this.
Thank you for joining us today. We are Cult Potato. I am Campion, and this is my good buddy, the voice of a generation, Mr. Grady Hooker, and we will see you all next time. There, was that good enough? Is that... Can I end the show now?
But maybe you should fade out as we're talking here at the end and